Hey guys, so do you ever find yourself wishing your survival horror game had more super hard puzzles to complete? No, us neither. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? So why then does it work so well in The Beast Inside? For the answer to that, you'll have to come with us on a journey that spans more than a century. We'll explain how the developers managed to make what feels like two different games, each with their own tone and feel, and mesh them both together under a single emphatic story. Come on guys, let's see what it's all about. So you'll start off playing as Adam, who as it turns out is some form of codebreaker / agent for the government at the height of the Cold War. It's fairly ambiguous in description and reasoning, but basically him and his wife are moving out into the country so he can get to work deciphering the comic codes. The new home is a big old wooden house with a mountainous backdrop. It's idyllic and starts off peacefully with some light puzzles and a to-do list to get you going with the game mechanics, typically as most of these type of games do. Soon though, and this sets the theme for almost the entirety of the game, you'll switch to another character named Nicholas, who lived in the same house but over 100 years previously. The Beast Inside is made up of several chapters and you'll flip between the two protagonists at the start of each one. It's a really interesting feature which is not only strong in story but also in application. You see, with each character switch comes with what almost feels like a switch to another game and another genre entirely. One character brings tough puzzles, adventure and intrigue, while the other has a more sinister approach and will see you with a more typical survival horror setting. Playing as Adam, you'll be out in the woods looking for clues to a plot James Bond would be proud of, while with Nicholas, you'll be trying to survive an onslaught of ghostly enemies while also trying to figure out a seemingly unrelated plot mystery. This change between characters offers a nice switch of pace. If your nerves have taken a beating playing in the nightmarish setting Nicholas finds himself in, well now you can play as Adam and recover for a little bit. Not to say that Adam's story doesn't come with creepy elements of its own, because it does, but they both have a very different feel to them. This lessens as the story progresses and the two characters start to intertwine, but it does a fair bit of the game like this, and to be honest I enjoyed it. I have to give the devs a lot of credit for being able to keep the two parts feeling fresh and different from one another before ultimately bringing them together as a single story. Game isn't perfect though, and before talking about some more things we did like, let's first go over what we didn't so much like. Quick time events. Quick time events. There are quite a lot of them in this game. Simple ones too. You'll either press left mouse or right mouse button. That's it. Thankfully, they don't last long, but towards the end of the game, you'll see them when they're about to happen so clearly, since they're often sequences from previous chapters that you've already done a few times. Oh look, here's another wooden bridge that's falling apart. I wonder if this one will break near the end like the last three did. Oh look, it did. Let me left click the mouse button 3 times to pull myself back up again. Yeah, not really a fan of those in game, or any other game for that matter. However, here they are particularly mundane. They even make the game feel a little bit cheap when it happens, which lets it down because this isn't representative of what otherwise is quite a classic and authentic affair. Another one is interacting with objects. In The Beast Inside you can interact with a lot of different objects. That itself is usually a good thing. However, in the game the controls for grabbing objects aren't amazing. They aren't particularly bad, but when you have to grab levers and other such items amidst like a chase scene, it can be quite annoying. For whatever reason the game decides you didn't quite grab it right and you just stood there doing nothing. Honestly, it isn't game breaking, it usually works fine, but the odd time it did frustrate us that we couldn't do it seamlessly. There isn't much else wrong with the game to be honest, apart from maybe a few minor things we might touch on later. So just very quickly guys, if you like this video please consider liking and subscribing. We do reviews, giveaways including subscriber only and other game related content. Thanks for your support. When it comes to games with a strong emphasis on story and atmosphere, it's important that they should have good sound and music, right? Well, thankfully A Beast Inside does. The sound effects are nice and meaty, giving emphasis to yours and other character actions. The score is atmospheric, with some nice bassy overtones when they really wanted to crank the feels up to the next level. It's the kind of game where when you're being chased, the music alone is enough to get your adrenaline pumping and your feet shifting. Yeah, I like the sound of music in this game. Visually, the game looks good for the most part. Some bits have a lack of polish and some models feel a bit off at times. Take Adam's wife Emma, for example. The model doesn't look great, maybe even PS3 level of mediocrity. which is a shame because I could be deeply engrossed in the game and then see Emma or maybe one or two other things and lose my complete immersion in it. However, when looking off into the mountain vistas is when the game looks its best. This is probably improved with clever lighting and clouds, etc, but I couldn't help stop and look around from time to time. It was really nicely done. I'm not sure if any of you ever played Firewatch, a beautifully done mystery game. See the link above for our review on that, we definitely recommend it. But I couldn't help be reminded of that game when playing some early Adam chapters. You might also get Alan Wake vibes from this from time to time, plus be reminded of other haunted house type horror games that are always popping up on Steam these days. I think it would be fair to say A Beast Inside takes inspiration from some other games without ever copying them completely or becoming a cheap knockoff. To be honest, I had low expectations going into this game. I'd just read a couple of reviews and it seemed not everybody thought it was up to much, so I was genuinely surprised at the scope of the game once I got playing. Far from being confined to the haunted house or its premise, you'll be in a variety of buildings, caves, woodlands and mountains. The story has a depth of narrative that you don't usually find in an horror game, and it doesn't hold your hand and give everything away cheaply. At times it can be a real challenge. The puzzles are no joke, get your notepad out, seriously, and certain enemies and maps can be a real challenge to get past. So you know we're currently doing the full game walkthrough for those who prefer watching rather than playing these games, so you might see that linked above too. There are 3 difficult levels. We played through it a couple of times on normal difficulty. If you don't fancy playing it on normal or hard, then you can switch to the lowest difficulty, which seems to be light on combat and puzzles in order to let you prioritise the story over the gameplay. Personally, I'll not be doing the harder difficulty as I found the normal to be enough of a challenge, but I'm sure it will make a really difficult experience for those who'd really like one. Without trying to sound too uppity, The Beast Inside is a thinking man's survival horror game. Of course you'll need your wits about it to decipher the puzzles and mysteries, but also thinking man's survival horror in the way of introspection. What would you do for your family? What would you do for your country? What would you do if your actions betrayed your intentions? I'm being intentionally vague here as I won't provide spoilers, and discussing the story more would be doing so. However, the game also leaves questions unanswered, even at its conclusion. There are multiple endings to toy with here. It's quite emotional and ambiguous enough that it'll have you rethinking or even replaying everything again to try and fully make sense of it all. So with all that said, it might not surprise you to hear that we most definitely recommend A Beast Inside. Just be aware of what you're getting into. This isn't one to play casually or half-heartedly. It's one that might drain you, might even disgust you at times, but it should always keep you interested enough to see it to its conclusion. Currently available for £19.49 or maybe around $24 or so on Steam. I'd have no issue paying full price for the 10 plus hours you'll probably spend playing it. For those who like the look of it but don't usually play these type of games, then maybe wait for the sale. Do play it though, as it's well worth your time and money. Thanks for watching guys. For plenty more reviews, walkthroughs and of course giveaways, please consider liking, subscribing and following us on Twitter, all in the description. Thanks and see you next time. Take care.